Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar. I'm Barb Sapaniak, Vice President for Programs for the DuPage Foundation, and I have Laura Timmerberg, our Program Officer, and Clarice Vidmar, our Advancement Associate with me. And I just want to mention, both of them have new names. They're the same people, but they both got married last year, so you're seeing different names that you may have seen in the past. So today we're going to spend about 20 minutes talking about our community impact and Arts DuPage grant programs. And while we're talking, please submit any questions you have in the Q&A section, and we'll spend about 10 minutes answering your questions. So our community impact and Arts DuPage grant guidelines are now posted on our website. You probably, if you've been to the website, you'll see that it's new. And as grant opportunities become available throughout the year, we will continue to post them under the nonprofit heading that is shown on this slide. But today I'm going to go briefly through our guidelines to highlight a few changes that have been made this year and to talk about some of the areas where we often get questions. And I'm going to start with due dates, application due dates. Through our Community Impact Grant Program, we consider applications in the areas of health and human services, workforce development, youth education, environment, and animal welfare. The health and human services requests are considered in the spring, and the due date for these applications is Friday, March 6th. The youth education, workforce development, environment, and animal welfare applications are considered in the fall, and those applications are going to be due on Friday, September 4th. And I would say these dates are very consistent with previous timeframes for these grants. However, we've made a significant change in the time frame for Arts DuPage applications. In the past, the arts applications were due in September. This year, they're going to be due on Friday, June 19th. And we made this change because so many of the arts organizations' seasons begin in September, and we thought it would be more helpful to distribute the arts grants closer to the beginning of your seasons. As I mentioned, the Arts DuPage guidelines are on our website already, but we haven't opened up the application. We will do that in April, and we'll host another webinar specifically focused on the arts at that time. In all cases, all of the applications, Community Impact and Arts DuPage, are due by 5 o'clock on the respective dates. And we don't accept any applications received after that time. We've had a few occasions over the years where applicants ran into trouble at the last minute and their applications were submitted late, and sometimes just a minute or two, and then they weren't considered. Life happens, and unfortunately, problems seem to occur at the worst times. So we strongly suggest that you don't wait until the last day to submit. So for example, some of the issues people have had when they've submitted later in the day on the due date, their internet wasn't working or the electric went out. In some cases, documents took longer to download, or when they went to submit, it didn't go through because they had missed a question or missed uploading something, and then it was too late. So if you're encountering a problem when you're submitting your application, we're available to help walk you through the issue. However, if it does get too close to the 5 o'clock deadline, it's possible we won't be able to help you resolve the issue in time for submission. So again, please don't wait until the last few hours. So through our Community Impact and Arts DuPage grant programs, we offer seed, sustain, and strengthen grant opportunities. The seed grants were first offered last year for organizations that have had their 501c3 designation for less than 3 years. And through this opportunity, organizations can apply for a dollar-for-dollar matching grant up to $5,000. If you receive a seed grant, funds will be distributed when your organization provides documentation that you've raised the matching amount. And the reason we decided to do this is we know that it's hard to raise money, especially for new organizations, and this gives organizations an opportunity to build diverse sources of funding. I need to emphasize here, though, that for seed grants, the organization must have already received their 501c3 designation before applying, because we can't issue a grant without that. Sustain grants are basically the grants we've traditionally awarded through Community Impact and Arts DuPage, but this year, the maximum amount you can apply for varies in each category. The organizations providing programs in the areas of health and human services, youth education, workforce development, and environment may apply up to $25,000. The maximum amount for animal welfare organizations is $10,000 this year. And we made this change because we have an extremely limited amount of funding available in this area, and we're receiving many applications. And this really helps to manage expectations of what we can fund. And we've also changed the maximum amount Arts DuPage grant, the maximum amount that Arts DuPage applicants can apply for. And that amount is $15,000, and it's for the same reason. If you apply for a sustained grant of $5,000 or less, you will automatically be directed to a streamlined version of the application that requires less information. So a question that often comes up is, how much should I apply for? And I can't specifically answer that question, but you should apply for an amount that aligns with the level of impact that your program will have in the community, as well as the size of your organization. And one suggestion is to determine a request amount is to look at previously funded grants on our website to get a sense of the size grants that we have awarded to other agencies of similar size or programming. Also, if you are an organization that is new to the foundation, I really would suggest starting with a smaller grant request. Our committee usually likes to have some experience with an organization before they're going to award a larger grant, and they tend to respond more favorably to small requests when we're not familiar with an organization. Strengthen grants for 2026 will be capacity building grants focused on helping organizations to build your capacity. And this is a relatively new grant opportunity, and we're currently in the process of tweaking it for this year. We will be offering it, but I'm not yet sure when we will post the guidelines and open the application. But when we do, we will send out an email and post its availability on social media. So regarding our priorities in each of the categories, as the needs in the community continue to grow, the number of applications we're receiving has increased as well. We certainly want to fund every good program, but the reality is that our grant budget enables us to fund about a third of the requests that we receive. We share our vetted applications with individuals who have donor advised funds at the foundation, and with their generous support, we have traditionally been able to fund closer to 2/3 of the applications in the last few years. But due to the continually increasing number of applications, we have modified our priorities to specifically focus on some of our community's greatest challenges. So you will notice in each of those areas, like health and human services, that the priorities are a little more specific. And we've listed here on this slide the health and human services, youth education, and workforce development, because those are different from last year. Arts DuPage, environment, and animal welfare priorities have not really changed, so they're not on this slide, but they can be viewed on our website. So eligibility. Through our community impact and Arts DuPage grant programs, we accept applications from 501c3 public charities that primarily serve DuPage residents, except those listed on our restricted list, and I'll talk about that in a minute. In some cases, we'll also consider applications from organizations that serve a wider region than DuPage. And an example of this might be a Chicago-based organization that has a DuPage center where they are delivering services to DuPage residents. But we're also seeing more and more organizations that are located outside the county, but they want to expand into DuPage. And well, many of them are doing great work. We're not going to consider the applications from them unless they have already established programming and a presence in DuPage County. And I will say that even when organizations are technically eligible, with the limited funding that we have available, the committee will prioritize funding to the organizations that are located in DuPage and those that have the greatest benefit, are going to benefit the greatest number of DuPage residents. So on this slide, I want to talk a little bit about restrictions. We have a list of them here, but I want to emphasize a few of them because we often get questions here. We don't fund programs where participation or exposure to religious activities is a part of the program or delivery of services. And when our committee is reviewing applications, they do look at websites, and while the religious nature of a program may not be specified in the application, it's very clear on the website that it's definitely a core aspect in the delivery of services. We also don't fund governmental entities such as libraries, schools, or park districts. And this also applies to supporting foundations. And I get this question a lot. For example, an educational foundation that supports a local school district is not able to apply even though they are a 501c3. We just have so many park districts, school districts, and governmental entities in DuPage County, we would never be able to fund all of them. But there is one exception to the governmental restriction. We will accept applications from governmental entities in the area of workforce development for programs that align very closely with the priority that is listed in that area. I'd now like to turn it over to Laura Timmerberg to talk about the grant application process.
Thanks, Barb. All grant applications are submitted through our online grantee portal, and you can find that link also at DuPageFoundation.org. As Barb mentioned, the spring applications for Health and Human Services are now open. So if you go on there now, they're live. Arts DuPage will open in April, and the fall applications will be available in mid-May. All of our grant applications are reviewed by our grant committee, which is made up of board members and community volunteers. They ultimately make the funding recommendations to our Board of Trustees for final approval. Many of them have extensive grant evaluation experience, but aren't necessarily experts in every issue. So it's important to write your application in layman's terms so reviewers can get a good understanding of your organization and program. Also, try and limit the use of acronyms. It can get super confusing if there's too many to follow throughout the application. As Barb mentioned, we share a list of vetted applications with our donor advisors. These are people who have established funds at the foundation, and many use this opportunity to learn about all of your organizations. They have been very generous over the past few years in providing funding that helps boost our overall grant budget. Last year, their support doubled the amount that we could award through Community Impact and Arts DuPage. And when we send them that list, they only see the name of your organization, the amount requested, and the purpose statement. So make sure that statement is strong and explains what your program will do. It really is one sentence though, so it has to be concise. So once you log into our portal, before you start an application, you will see an eligibility quiz that asks several questions about your organization and program. If you qualify, you'll receive an eligible notification and you'll be able to move forward with the application by clicking the apply button that will show up. If you don't qualify, you'll receive an ineligible notification for that respective grant cycle. So one reason that you might get an ineligible response is if you're applying for a workforce development program during the spring cycle when Health and Human Service grants are being considered. If you receive an ineligible response and feel that it's incorrect, please reach out to us to discuss it further. And I want to emphasize that this is intended to prevent organizations that aren't eligible from spending time on completing an application only to end up having it not be considered. Please keep in mind when you sign your application, you're confirming that everything in it is accurate, including these eligibility responses. And once you get into the application, these are the financial forms or attachments that applicants will be required to submit. When you're preparing them, I strongly suggest having your finance person or an accountant look at them, especially the financial indicators form, which is only required if you're applying for more than $5,000. They're familiar with the information we're looking for and know where it can be found. Sometimes we also see financials that don't align with the narrative of your program. So before you submit your application, make sure that the numbers make sense and match the rest of the information. Please also check that the financials are the most current you have available, not your operating budget from a few years ago, and that none of the attachments are blank. Give yourself enough time to look over the application again before submitting it. A fresh set of eyes really helps, as long as you get it in by the 5 o'clock deadline. So that was a lot of information, and we want to open things up and answer questions. Please enter them in the Q&A section of the Zoom, and Clarice is going to moderate for us, and we'll try and get through as many as we can.
Okay, we already have a couple good questions. We had one question of if somebody can apply for multiple grant categories. So this person specifically asked if they could apply for both health and human services as well as workforce development.
So, excuse me. So I should have mentioned that organizations can only apply for one can only submit one grant application every calendar year for community impact and or Arts DuPage. So if you apply for health and human services, whether you receive a grant or not, you are not eligible to apply for workforce development or environment in the fall. So if you apply in the spring, you cannot apply in the fall.
Okay. Laura, could you repeat what donor advisors see when they're looking at the grant application?
Absolutely. So we send them, it's the name of your organization, how much you requested, and the purpose statement, which is one of the first questions in your application. I should also say at the end of your application, before you sign it, we ask for your consent to be able to share that with our donor advisors. And some of them, if they're interested, do look at the full grant application or pieces of it. But that is also up to you. If you check no on that box, we will not share it with the donor advisors. But they start off with just those three things.
Will you accept applications from fiscally sponsored organizations?
We have, yes, we would. As long as the organization is, as long as you're providing the financials for the organization that is the fiscal sponsor, as well as a budget and information for the work that you're doing. We've received that in the past, but we've gotten, from like a large organization, but it doesn't tell us anything about the operations of your specific program or work.
Okay. We did get a question of an organization that says they're a faith-based organization, but they have classes, including Bible study class, but none of them are required. Are they still eligible?
Well, we will accept applications from faith-based organizations, but if any type of Bible study or religious programming is part of the delivery of services, so if that's part of the class, no, we would not consider that.
Okay.
And we are, even if you don't put it in the application, we do follow up, especially with religious organizations. We are going to follow up, ask questions, and we're also going to check the websites.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. I am going to let our attendees know we're getting lots of questions, and thank you guys for putting your questions in the chat. We're going to try and get through as many as we can. If there is a question that doesn't get answered, you can always follow up with Barbara or Laura. So the next question is, for the financials, do they need to be audited? And can you explain the indicators form in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, so you do not, if your organization gets an audit, we would like to see it. It is a required question on our application, but if your organization doesn't get one, if you don't hit that threshold, we just ask that you explain why. And the financial indicators form is a Excel spreadsheet that is made by us that will do some calculations based on your 990. You can preview that within the application preview on our website, or if you want to see it ahead of time, you can always reach out and we can send you a copy of it. I will say sometimes we have organizations that are applying for more than $5,000 that can't really fill out that form. Maybe they do a 990 postcard and they might not have all of those figures. We can accept those applications, but I would maybe suggest if your organization cannot fill out the financial indicators form, maybe we should be applying for $5,000. But we can always talk it through and show it to you ahead of time. That is not a standard form that your accountant or finance person would have, but we can share that template with you.
And make sure the information aligns with your 990.
Yeah, sometimes we get negative percentages. So it's just good to have an extra set of eyes on that to just see, does this make sense?
Next question. Barb, could you talk a little bit about the changes to youth education? I believe there are changes in priorities. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So yeah, the main change is that we are really focused on at-risk youth, academic, after-school academic, and leadership programs for at-risk youth. Some of the things that we funded in this area are after-school programs, such as like a program that kids can go to, work on their homework, or I'm trying to think of most of them are after-school yeah, it would be after-school programs. But it hasn't changed a whole lot from last year. I think we really just really focused on at-risk populations, because again, there's so many organizations providing youth programs, and we just can't fund all of them.
Talking for first-time applicants, I know you kind of went over this, but is there a guide for how much first-time applicants should be applying for?
Well, it's hard. I mean, if you really don't know, I mean, I'm happy to talk with you, but I would say if you've never applied to the foundation, our committee doesn't know you, and they're probably not going to take a chance and give a larger grant. They are going to, if you apply for, let's say, 5,000 or a smaller amount, meaning don't go for the 25,000, you would have a better chance of getting funded. And I think a lot of times organizations will automatically think, I'm going to apply for 25,000. And it's very, very rare that our grant committee would fund that full amount to an organization we have no experience with. So we want to know that you're going to be good stewards with the funds that we've awarded. So start smaller.
That's helpful. Thank you. So for the governmental restrictions, if an organization is partially funded by a park district, would they still be eligible for funding?
Well, for the government restriction, it's only on the workforce development program. And it's really going to be focused on those programs that are, and I don't have the guideline right in front of me. Can you pull up that slide by any chance?
I can try.
Okay, you know what? It's really going to be focused on the programs that are trying to
go back. Sorry.
Yeah.
Restrictions. Is it this way?
One more.
Eligibility. There you go.
Oh, one more.
One more.
No more.
There you go.
It's really going to be focused on, specific programs that are training, helping people to acquire certifications so that they can obtain employment. This is not going to be the type of grants where we're going to have a class and we're just going to be talking about soft skills. It's really, really more focused on building those hard skills that they need to be able to upskill or to get into the skilled trades. So if you're partially funded by a park district, I think that would have to be something that I would have to talk specifically with you.
Okay, that's helpful. For organizations that are funded, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. For organizations that are funded, how long does it take for them to receive the grant funding?
So I'll use the spring cycle as an example. That one, the application is due in the beginning of March. You will be notified of the funding decision in mid to late May, and Barb can jump in with the exact date if she knows it. Then we will award the grants. You'll physically get the check in June, and that grant period will be June 1st, 2026 through May 2027. And I see the second part of that question, the reporting back, so that the final report for this spring cycles grants will be due May 1st, 2027. And we ask just for an update on how you use the funds. How did things go? Did it follow the grant agreement? How did you publicize it? And if you're applying for more than $5,000, an update on that outcomes measure table, along with the final budget and photos, which we always love to get. I know it's definitely hard when you're running programs to take a step back and remember to take photos, but we love high quality photos that show people in action and doing things. Obviously, with client confidentiality, sometimes that's not, we can't get a ton from every organization, but if you can, that final report is a great spot to share what you're doing visually.
And we use those for our publications. So it's another opportunity for if they're really good photos, we can use it and we continue to publicize your organization. And that date would be approximately May 22nd. We go to our board on May 21st, and we usually send an email to the person that, the contact person on the application. And that would be sent, normally it's that Friday, and it would be May 22nd.
Thank you guys. I think we have time for like one or two more questions. If somebody applies in the spring, will they still be eligible for capacity building grants when they open?
Yes.
That was easy.
Yeah.
One more question. What if an organization does not specifically, if they don't specifically line up with the priorities of the grant applications, do they still have a chance of being funded?
I mean, you can still apply. I would say in the application, try to, make a case for that toward that priority. So for example, if you're an organization that delivers programming in the area of disabilities, but you also have a mental health program, you should apply for the mental health program because that will align with the priorities. Even though you have needs in the area of disabilities, you would have a much better chance of receiving funding if you stay focused on the priorities. We're going to look at applications, but the committee is going to prioritize. We just received so many applications that we have to really narrow our focus and look at some of those issues that are just huge in DuPage County right now. So it's how the committee will be prioritizing, and they will prioritize those that are more closely aligned.
One more question. If an organization has an arts aspect and another area aspect, so in this case, mental health, which application would you recommend they apply for? Arts DuPage or under mental health?
So if you were doing a mental health program that is expanding access to mental health services, you would apply in the Health and Human Services category. If the program is an arts program that's, designed to help people, with their mental health, that would be more of an arts program.
Perfect. And again, if people have specific questions, they can reach out to you guys, correct?
I do see one on animal welfare, and I think that's the only one that's still there.
Yes.
If it's an animal welfare organization, programming is focused on seniors or in the schools. With the animal welfare, the program really needs to be the benefit to the animal, not necessarily the humans. So if you apply for a program for anything that relates to animals, the animal welfare is only if it's going to benefit those dogs and cats and birds and whatever.
Okay. Well, this is super helpful. Thank you guys so much. And the recording will be posted on our website. So thank you all for attending.
Thank you.